What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Winkler Knives field knife. Now, I'm a little bit of a newcomer to Winkler Knives, but as I've said in some of my previous videos, I went from 0 Winkler Knives to 3 Winkler Knives in like a period of 3 or 4 months, and that's just how much I've enjoyed each one of them, and I wanted to start the review by kind of introducing Winkler Knives. I've tried to do that in the past, but I think it's worth repeating because I haven't found a lot of information on Winkler Knives on YouTube. I haven't seen a lot of videos, so I think it's worth noting. So Dan Winkler, he is a master bladesmith, and he's known for doing all of the blades and axes of The Last of the Mohicans, the movie. And what he's done is he uses a more traditional knives, more historical blades, and that's what he bases his designs on. Now, he uses 80 CRV2 steel, which is what I would call a middling steel. But that said, I had some correspondence with Dan Winkler, and what he's told me, and I'll take the word of a master bladesmith over my own, is that the process that he does for heat treatment is very different. Is very different than anybody else. Most people will, cut the outline of the knife, heat treat, and then grind the primary bevel. And what the reason they do that is because the heat treatment process has a tendency to warp the steel, and a full blank is less likely to warp. Than if you grind it and then you heat treat. Then this is much thinner, and then there's more of a chance for it to warp. But what happens when you do that is that the grinding process after heat treatment removes some of the properties that you gain during the heat treatment process. So and that's what he does different. He grinds the primary bevel first, and then he does the heat treatment afterwards. So all of the heat treatment properties are preserved because he's already ground the primary bevel. Now, what that does is that you have to be a lot more careful, and there's a far more chance to make a mistake because now you're doing the heat treatment on a thinner blade. So that's what makes these knives, better, and that's kind of what part of the quality control and the quality that you get when you get a Winkler knife. And I can attest to that. I've sharpened many different types of steel, S110V, S90B, M390, 3V, and this is the one that I found that is harder to sharpen, even though it's compositionally or by reputation kind of a middle of the pack steel. I've got to tell you that the edge retention and the strength of the steel is just very, very good. So now, if we talk about this knife in particular, this is one of his larger knives. I don't know if it's his largest. It's hard to find his entire lineup somewhere, but this has got to be one of his larger knives. The blade is right at 5 3/4 inches, maybe a little bit more, not quite 6, and the overall length is about 10 1/4 inches. So it's a larger knife. So for things like large, like harder tasks, some chopping wood or cutting through some thicker stuff, this is kind of the knife that you want to do. It's hard to find fixed blades that are good for size comparisons, so I'll just stick with my folding knife comparisons. That's a para 2, and that's the full size bucket. As you might imagine, the para 3 and the mini bucket are but as you can see, it's a pretty big knife. And what you have is it's a little bit strange, because generally what I see is in blades that are this large, I usually see a thicker spine, a thicker stock. So this one, for its size, feels like a much faster knife. You know, for skinning, for even for chopping, even though you don't have the heft, you get speed, and so it helps with that. Now, it doesn't help too much. I've tried to baton with this, and because it's a full flat grind from top to bottom, you never, usually with bushcraft type knives or camping type knives, you get a flat grind, and then a bevel, like a saber grind, and so you don't have that here. So for batoning is not the best, but for many other outdoor hard use type tasks, I find that this knife is very good, and it's very adequate. And because it's a little bit lighter, because it has a thinner blade, I find myself reaching for this for a lot of things that are not, heavy duty wood processing. Now, in my Winkler Knives overview, I talked about the ergonomics of these knives, and I think that's something, I don't know if it's because they're historical in nature, but I think that the ergonomics could be better on these knives. I think it's my only gripe of this one in particular is that the ergonomics are not great. The handle is fairly thin in this direction. It is somewhat tall, but it doesn't feel your hand quite as well as, let's say, a Bark River knife. And it doesn't have the Coke bottle shape that the Bark River does, so it doesn't fill your palm in the same way, which results in when you're using the knife, when you chop, or when you really put your weight to it, it doesn't feel quite as good as some of those other knives. Now, because it retains its edge and because it's a thinner stock, it still cuts very well, and you can still do a lot of things. And I reach for this knife for a lot of things, but I do think that the ergonomics could be a little bit better. Just a contouring of the handle that's a little bit better. Even though, man, they use this beautiful. I think this is maple, but it's been colored to look like walnut, especially this side, right, where it's like you got like a quilted. It's like a sheen for the quilted maple. It's just really nice. As I said, cutting's very good. And before I forget, they have this very unique jimping, and hopefully you can tell. Let me put it back down here. So it's got like these lines, and then the circular divots, and then more lines. And what that does, it's pretty aggressive. Okay, if you put your finger to it, and then you dig into it, you can see it's marked my finger. So it's heavy jimping, but your hand's not going anywhere with that jimping. So I think that's part of what I wanted to say on the ergonomics. So as I mentioned, cutting wise, I think for most, I would say that this is a good camping knife if you're not going to be processing wood, kind of like batoning, going through some heavy stuff. It's going to work really well for food preparation. It's going to work really well for some for some wood processing tasks that are minor, some feather sticking, that kind of thing. Now, the fit and finish on these knives is just incredible. You got a really good jimping. You have, the Winkler knives on the spine. Everything just feels nice and smooth and even. You got a lanyard hole here in the back. You got this, I don't know if it's I think it's a coating. I'm not sure. It's somewhere between a coating and an acid wash. It's just, or a black wash. It's really nicely done. So the quality is really good. But I think where these things take it to the next level, and I've said this before, is in the sheaths. The sheath of a Winkler knife is the best sheath in the world, at least in my opinion. You know, I've had Kydex sheaths, I've got leather sheaths, I've got nylon sheaths, and this is by far what I would consider the best sheath. And it's because they do a layered system where it has this kind of leather, or it's like a felt interior inside, and then you've got Kydex in the middle, and then you got leather on the outside. So it's a sandwich of three things on both sides of this. And you have the leather that looks, you know, very traditionally on the outside, and it looks awesome. It just feels very nice. And then you got the retention of Kydex in the center, but because they've lined it with this felt, you never get that clicky, plasticky feel when you're getting your knife in and out. And of course, you know, the retention is great. There's no way that it's coming out. So you got the retention of Kydex, but you don't get that plasticky feel with the lining, and you get the leather look of a more traditional knife. So if I could have all of my sheaths done in this way for all of my knives, this is what I would get. It's just, oh, and it's got this, it's not a tech lock, but it's this plate that you can obviously change from one side to the other side and get it to carry left-handed, and you can rotate it 90 degrees too if you want to do if you wanted to do a Scout's carry on it. So, like I said, I think the sheath is one of the biggest selling points, and I think I would almost say that it's worth having a Winkler knife just because of the sheath. I mean, they are incredible blades, don't get me wrong, but if nothing else, give yourself a chance to try out these sheaths. They are amazing. Now, airing of grievances, I don't have many. I really like Winkler knives, but I'll mention a couple. He's a master bladesmith, so I'm gonna take him at his word. But I am curious, you know, if he does the same process of, you know, grinding first and heat treating second on a steel like 3V or like a Crewwear or one of those. I am curious, and I would like to. I think it'd be a sight to see one of those steels done in the process that Dan Winkler does. I think it'd just be incredible. I would like the handles to be more to be fatter. I have larger hands. I wear size large gloves, and I would like it to be thicker, or at least have, you know, a little swell, a little larger swell in the middle. I think that would, you know, for some of the harder tasks that you'd use a fixed blade for. And make no mistake, that's the point of fixed blades, right? You want something where the lock's not gonna fail, that you're just gonna go. Then I would like a more ergonomic handle. Other than that, I think it's an incredibly well-made blade. I think it cuts really good. I think the wood is beautiful, and I think that the steel, although it's kind of a compositionally a middling steel, in the hands of a master bladesmith, it's become just something that is, it retains an edge better than a lot of steels that I've seen better. So that's what gets me curious on to see, you know, what he could do with one of the quote unquote premium steels. Well, guys, there you have it, the review of the Winkler Knives field knife. If you have questions or you have suggestions, you want to tell me what other Winkler knives you guys have out there, let me know in the comments below. And until you see you again, take care.